Mick and Ralph's. Cool. Can I try? Thanks, mister.
Fallout New Vegas is one of my favorite games of all time. I'm sure you've heard this before. If you are here, statistically speaking, you've already clocked in hundreds of hours into this game. In fact, I can guarantee that the percentage of people seeking fresh information from a New Vegas video is close to zero because there's really nothing new to say about this game. Everybody knows New Vegas. It's a cult classic of such proportions that it distorts the very definition of cult classic. It's been discussed to death, and to be honest with you, I don't think I have anything unique to add about it. Yeah, what a way to sabotage my video from the first minute. So, why am I here? Why am I making this video? Well, you see, I'm not what you would call a die-hard Fallout fan. Allow me to briefly describe my history with the series. So, Fallout 1 and 2, the classics. I was too young to enjoy them in the 90s, and when I grew up it was too late for me. I tried playing them both, but I didn't get into them. Fallout 3, the infamous reboot. I played it for, I don't know, an hour. I recall blowing up the first settlement. Fallout 4, same as 3, an hour tops. Oh, I played Wasteland 2. It counts, right? Naturally, I'm not very familiar with the lore. I know this guy was in Fallout 2 and that she's the daughter of some Fallout 2 companion. I also know that the Boneyard is what they call the ruins of Los Angeles and that it was a location in the first Fallout or something, but that's about it. My experience with the Fallout franchise is limited to New Vegas, and I thought people would enjoy hearing the perspective of an outsider. So, before we get to the actual video, mods. This game looks like absolute dog shit. It looks as if Oblivion ate Bulletstorm and shat rust all over a Denis Villeneuve movie. So I grabbed the Poco Bueno mod. It replaces some textures and makes the game look prettier without being too taxing on your system. And that's it as far as the mods go. I'm not a purist, I just can't seem to make the game work with more than 2 mods at once. I'm not good at this, so let's get to the actual game now. The setup of the game is very simple. You are a courier tasked with delivering a precious object called the Platinum Chip to the New Vegas Strip. You are intercepted near Goodsprings by a group of thugs led by Chandler Bing, who steals the chip and blows your brains out. You wake up sometime later to the voice of a small-town doctor with a horrible headache and no recollection of prior events, and in true video game fashion, this kicks off the character creation phase. Actually, that's not entirely accurate. You know exactly what happened to you. This is not one of those games that uses the amnesiac protagonist trope to explain the protagonist's weakness and to contextualize character creation and progression. Obsidian did something very smart here with the character creation that I haven't seen many people give them credit for. So instead of experiencing an awful case of narrative amnesia, or convenientus amnesiacus to use the medical term, the character creation process is masked behind a standard medical checkup. The survival rate of a gunshot wound to the head is about 5%, so it makes sense for the only doctor in a 100-kilometer radius to ask you some questions before sending you out into the wasteland. I wish more devs did this, find creative ways to organically integrate the character creation process into the game itself. I admit it's just a small detail that many people will not care for, but I thought it's worth mentioning anyway. So after creating the ugliest looking bastard the wasteland has ever seen, you're pointed to the nearest settlement as the likeliest location to find out information about the people who shot you. After talking with the locals, you discover that you were rescued by a robot and the thugs who left you to die in a ditch were heading over to Novak, a settlement east of Goodsprings. Speaking of thugs, you find out that the Powder Gangers, a gang of escaped convicts who took control of a nearby prison, have been harassing the settlers to pay protection money. At this point, you can either help the locals deal with the Powder Gangers by convincing several community leaders to join the fight through skill checks, or be a bastard and betray the very people who took you in. There's really no benefit here in helping out the Powder Gangers, so I always end up killing them. Whatever you decide, the quest is completed and you're free to roam the wasteland. I usually hate having to go through long tutorial levels in games, which is also what prevents me from replaying most RPGs, but in this case it just sets up the game so nicely. So let's talk presentation and art direction now. Even though I bashed New Vegas for looking like dog shit earlier, that doesn't mean the presentation in general is bad. What New Vegas lacks in visual appeal, it makes up with stellar world building and painstaking attention to detail. The scale of the world and the level of detail are really impressive considering the limitations of the technology they had to work with and the short development time, which was just 18 months. Obsidian went all in with their vision of a post-apocalyptic setting with a neo-western spin. You can feel the grit, the dust and the filth of the Mojave Desert with every step. It's so immersive and atmospheric that at times I almost forgot about the atrociously slow walking speed. I love exploring every nook and cranny, looting abandoned shacks and gas stations and admiring the rusty remnants of America's mighty pre-war industry. Seeing the ruins of this once modern society that fell prey to its excesses and the greed of corrupt politicians always puts a knot in my stomach because I always think how many lives were lost for nothing really. I don't know, I'm just rambling. It's worth mentioning that the tone of New Vegas is not overtly bleak. It is an oppressive setting, but it has tons of humor too. It doesn't go into full wacky satirical territory as something like, I don't know, Fallout 3. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that New Vegas is a better game for this reason, nor that Fallout 3 is a lesser entry because of its silliness. It's just that the clever blend between the humor and the bleakness of the setting struck a chord with me on a personal level. It's tonally consistent from start to finish is what I'm trying to say. One thing that I found very strange about New Vegas is that it looks like the apocalypse happened just 5 minutes ago. These people live in squalor and filth, the beds are dirty, the walls are shriveled, the floors are littered with trash and random crap. I mean, okay, I get it, they have more important things to worry about like giant mutated scorpions, but holy shit, it's been like 200 years since the bombs fell, so you'd assume somebody thought about picking up a broom and sweeping the damn place. Anyway, New Vegas is also proof that you don't need a powerful graphical engine to create worlds that feel believable and authentic. And there's no better example here than the tens of settlements, big and small, spread throughout the Mojave Desert, as well as the people populating them. The best way to illustrate my point is to paraphrase one of my favorite videos on YouTube. What do they eat? It may sound like a weird question, but it makes more sense than you may think. Many companies go to great lengths to create these large, expansive and beautiful worlds that, despite the level of work and care that went into them, still feel barren and bland. And that's because many devs, not all but many, focus so much on the big picture that they forget to address the truly important stuff. I'm talking about the little bolts and mechanisms and whatnot that glue everything together and make the game world feel like a living, breathing place. No matter what you tell me, out of Corines from Gothic 2 and The Witcher's Novigrad, I'll always go with the former as being the more immersive and believable out of the two. Scale, graphical fidelity and elaborate weather effects is not everything. It's the little stuff like what do they eat? And Fallout New Vegas, like Gothic 2, answers this question. So what do they eat? Well, here are some crops. What does their food eat? Well, here's a water pumping station. What does the water pumping station Okay, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but you get the idea. The world design and everything related to it reinforces the setting and the themes. The main narrative, as well as many of the side quests, revolve around the upcoming war between the NCR or the New California Republic and the Legion. We'll talk about the factions and the politics of New Vegas later in the video, but what I wanted to stress here is that the brewing conflict between these two powerful organizations has a visible impact on the world. You'll see NCR troops patrolling the roads, military outposts spread throughout the Mojave wasteland, random clashes between the NCR and the Legion. You really get this sense of a region in the midst of full military mobilization. You feel the tension that all cards are on the table and shit is about to get real, and I really like that. The same thing applies to the rest of the Mojave. Everything from the geographic positions of the settlements to the locations of various NPCs makes sense. Nothing exists in a vacuum. If you see an NPC in a particular location, you can be damn sure they're there for a good reason. Maybe they're seeking the next get-rich-quick scheme on the New Vegas Strip. Maybe they're looking for revenge. Everybody has a place in the world and an interesting story to tell. Even the degenerate bandits and raiders that are just XP fodder in other games have outposts where they sleep and eat. And in between these factions vying for power is you, the courier. Which brings us to the gameplay. There's a lot to unpack here, so just bear with me. Fallout New Vegas is, as you surely know, ARPG. You start out by creating your character and then proceed to stat allocation. I wouldn't worry too much about creating the perfect build at this point. This is not one of those RPGs where you're stuck with the same character sheet for the rest of the campaign. Just go with your gut and roll with the punches. The game lets you fiddle with your build later on anyway. Then you get to pick traits. This is when things get interesting and the depth of choice and role-playing potential of New Vegas become apparent. Traits modify aspects of the gameplay and your character, granting one benefit in an area while hampering another. I usually go with good-natured because I like role-playing as the narrator from The Big Lebowski. It boosts speech and barter amongst others, but it slightly hampers basically any combat-related skills. But I prefer talking my way out of confrontations anyway, so I don't really care. Speaking of confrontations, let's talk about the combat for a bit. Personally, I don't think it's that bad. I can see why some people dislike it, but it's unfair to hold New Vegas accountable for its combat when games like Elex exist. For whatever it's worth, the guns feel great, especially the revolvers and the battle rifle. The battle rifle in particular, which is my favorite weapon from New Vegas, has a nice sense of recoil and momentum. So the combat is serviceable, it does its job, and since this is a game where you can talk your way out of most fights and even do full-on pacifist runs, you can forgive New Vegas for the lackluster combat. I've had sessions where I went on for hours without shooting a single bullet, just talking with NPCs and losing all of my caps at blackjack. Which brings us to the faction system and the questing. New Vegas is absolutely stacked with factions and quests. I don't know how Obsidian managed to fill up the game with so much stuff in just 18 months. The sheer amount of content in this game is just staggering. Like, look at this, this is crazy! Anyway, because of the large number of factions created for New Vegas, developers reintroduced the reputation system that was first used in Fallout 2. Your standing with a faction can change depending on how you interact with them and certain decisions, and can affect many things. A good reputation may offer alternative ways to accomplish quests and vendor discounts. A bad reputation may block off entire quest chains or lead to the faction refusing to help you out and, in extreme cases, attack you on sight. New Vegas has like 1,000 factions, so I'm not gonna talk about all of them. So let's briefly go through the major players. NCR, or the New California Republic. They're your basic democratic pre-war nation. Caesar's Legion, or Kaiser's Legion. They dress up like Russell Crowe in The Gladiator and crucify people. Mr. House, the enigmatic ruler of New Vegas. He has a bitching mustache, I guess. All factions come with their own set of quests, all of which are linked in some way to the main narrative. This quest interconnectivity, which is complemented by the elaborate perk and skill system, is what makes New Vegas insanely replayable. New Vegas takes the concepts of player agency and choice to new heights. When people say that you can play this game however you want, they're really not exaggerating. Even the simplest quests have multiple solutions and branching paths. This is par for the course as far as RPGs go, sure, but Obsidian went a little further with the quest design here. This is Fallout 3's quest design, and this is New Vegas, this. There are multiple variables that can influence the course of a quest. They can range from a simple dialogue choice to a skill check, more often than not a speech check, or simply accomplishing certain tasks in a particular order. What I liked about New Vegas' questing system is that Obsidian were not afraid to block large chunks of content or even entire quest chains according to player choice. I think you all realize how ballsy this approach is. Many modern RPGs are designed to dump as much of their content as possible into your lap from the first playthrough, but not New Vegas. This approach to quest design reinforces the notion that all choices have consequences. Sure, you can go around and do whatever you want, kill every NPC and steal everything, but don't expect to get off scot-free. The game is reactive and adapts to your decisions. This is what makes New Vegas so empowering, knowing that something I did influenced the game world in a particular way, knowing that I was a bad boy and the game punished me by locking an entire quest chain. Let's take a look at a quest called How Little I Know. I was tasked by the NCR to infiltrate Gomorrah, a New Vegas casino managed by the Omerta's crime family, which is led by these two guys, Big Sal and Nero. There are multiple approaches here. I can barge into the casino guns blazing and murder everything in sight, but I decided to be a shrewd fox and look for a more discreet way to take them out of the picture. After some digging, I discovered that Cacino, one of the family's top lieutenants, has been doing some business on the side without the family's green light, but I needed proof. Fortunately for me, Caccino was stupid enough to detail all of his business dealings into his journal, which I pickpocketed from him with no problems. Now here's the kicker: I can take the incriminating journal to the bosses, win their favor and bring down the organization from the inside, or I can use it as leverage against Caccino. Since taking the journal to the bosses is a guaranteed death sentence, he's more than willing to help me, so I don't need to do that. First, I need to destroy some guns that the Omertas were planning to deliver to the Legion. There are multiple ways of doing this, but I'm not gonna cover all of them here. Regardless of how you do it, the next phase of the quest plays out the same. Caccino will inform you that, surprise surprise, the bosses put him in charge of finding out who's responsible for destroying the guns, and that now's the perfect time to kill them. After that, he'll lead you to a small room to meet the bosses. There, you can straight up shoot them or lie to Big Sal that Nero was planning to kill him. Big Sal will then proceed to kill Nero, which gives you and Caccino enough time to murder Big Sal. Caccino takes over the casino and the quest concludes. Keep in mind that this was just one way to accomplish the quest, and in my opinion it perfectly encapsulates the genius behind Obsidian's approach to quest design. If you still don't believe me, allow me to give you another example, but this time through a more stream of consciousness-like manner. So you may remember that the story starts with you getting shot in the head. Finally, I managed to track down the person who shot me. It was this shitstain, Benny. He's a chairman at one of New Vegas's casinos. Similar to the previous quest, I can choose to unleash the fury of the wasteland on his smug face, but I'm not that kind of guy. Killing him outright is a bit too crude for my sensibilities. I need answers first. So I decide to exploit his fear of being outed in public and convince him to have a one-on-one with me in the presidential suite. Once there, I was taken aback by his friendly demeanor. Gotta hand it to the guy, he's got a way with words. Man, he's a smooth talker. He's the bee's knees, the coolest of the cool. He has the charisma of Dean Martin and the cunning of a shark. He can talk a guy into sending his family to the fiends. After some old school New Vegas social preambles, Benny starts telling me his life story. He was the protege of Mr. House, who groomed Benny from a young age. However, Benny realized that his mentor was becoming a bit too power hungry, so he decided to betray him and take New Vegas for himself. The key to achieving his plans was the Platinum Chip, a priceless piece of technology that I was supposed to deliver to Mr. House. That's why he shot me and stole the package. It was nothing personal, just business. It could have been anyone else in my place. Now that I know Benny's motivations and got some semblance of closure, I can just splatter his brains on the bar, grab the chip and be on my way. But somehow I just can't bring myself to do it. Maybe I can bury the hatchet and work with Benny. After all, we're both professionals. He said it was not personal. That's just the way things go in New Vegas. Surely I can learn something from Benny's savoir-faire and cunning and make a name for myself on the strip. I think he'd be more than willing to take me under his wing and show me the ropes. To be honest, as exciting and intriguing as my job may be, I'm starting to get sick of killing bandits and exposing myself to insane amounts of radiation. Maybe one day I'll even run my own casino and me and Benny will reminisce about this over a drink in my penthouse and laugh. On the other hand, he's a snake. Benny is the kind of guy who'd kill his mother to achieve his goals. He's not necessarily evil, but I wouldn't trust him with my deepest secrets either. He shot me in cold blood and left me to die in a ditch. Why didn't he just try to buy the chip off of me? I know I may seem like a righteous person, but I'm more flexible than people think. I had no interest in aiding and abetting Mr. House's decades-long machinations to take over New Vegas. He's an asshole who cares only about himself. But so is Benny. I don't know, I'll put a pin on this and decide later what to do with him. So now it's time to talk about my favorite and, in my opinion, the best part of New Vegas. The writing. I've mentioned earlier that New Vegas is tonally consistent, offering a healthy mix of silliness and seriousness, and that extends to the writing too. The thing is that the silly elements never feel out of place because the writers made sure to create rich backgrounds and stories that link them to the overall game universe. Take the Kings.
The Kings.
For example, they're a gang of Elvis impersonators operating in Freeside, the outskirts of New Vegas. So this may seem silly and out of place, but get in their good graces and the King himself explains that they simply found a bunch of holotapes of Elvis and decided to replicate his style. The gang itself is based in a building that served as an Elvis Presley impersonation school before the war, so that explains the clothes and the hairstyles. So because the writers thought about these background details, you can really buy that such a gang could exist in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. The prospect of a gang of Elvis impersonators is absurd, but surprisingly grounded and realistic in the context of New Vegas. The result is that the occasional zaniness of the game doesn't clash with the darker themes and elements, they complement each other. Along with the faction system, New Vegas brings a deeper focus on the number one factor guaranteed to ruin all family reunions: politics. The thing that I find so intriguing about New Vegas' politics is that the game doesn't seem to take a clear stance. The political elements are not used to convey a certain message, but to demonstrate that even in a world blasted to shit by nukes, politics still hold dominion over everyday life. Every character you encounter, major or episodic, has an opinion about the political situation of the wasteland and one faction or another, but the thing that impressed me the most is that their takes are as nuanced as the factions themselves. Someone may sympathize with the NCR's goal to bring some semblance of order and stability to the Mojave wasteland in the form of democratic institutions and modern infrastructure, but at the same time loathe that expansionism and governmental apparatus boggled down by bureaucracy, corruption, and systemic incompetence. The Legion is the polar opposite of the NCR. A militaristic totalitarian dictatorship that practices large-scale slavery and crucifies people. They are initially depicted as the ultimate boogeyman, a criminal and parasitic organization whose sole purpose is to wreak havoc and kill anything and anyone who doesn't submit to their way of life. But once you talk with Caesar himself, you kinda start seeing where they're coming from. He believes that the NCR's attempt to re-establish the pre-war status quo is foolish and naive and will only kickstart the cycle that led to civilization ending in the first place. And yeah, he does make a good point. How did that saying about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results go? But you know, surely there were better ways to get your message across than enslaving and fucking crucifying people. Anyway, ultimately the choice is yours. You decide what's best for the wasteland in the long term. If you don't resonate with the NCR's or the Legion's ideals, you can always side with Mr. House or hell, even go full independent. The one thing that you have to know is that there's no ideal solution. They all have drawbacks. So that's my take on New Vegas. Its reactive and interconnected questing system is a sight to behold and in my opinion unequaled until now, at least in terms of sheer scale and scope. The world is believable and authentic thanks to the developers' care and attention to detail, and the writing is a work of art. Sure, it has its problems, frequent crashes, bugs and the like. The vaults suck, like holy shit they're so bad. But I don't care. Thanks for watching. As always, if you liked my video, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing for more content. See you next time.